High noon. Sunlight pierces the private hangar, illuminating $1 million disaster. A massive jet engine lies stripped on the floor. 20 elite engineers stand in a circle arguing. Tension is thick. Sophia Lang, the billionaire owner, crosses her arms, eyes cold as ice. The digital clock ticks. Every minute costs a fortune. Ethan Walker, a single dad in grease-stained overalls, pushes his tool cart past the crowd. His son, Max, waits in the corner. "Impossible!" the lead engineer snaps. "Replace the whole unit." Ethan stops. "It's not impossible," he says. The hangar erupts in laughter. Ethan Walker is 42 years old and his life is measured in grease, late-night shifts, and the quiet smiles of his son, Max. To the world at Virex Aerospace, Ethan is just a ghost, a freelance maintenance man hired to handle the dirty work that the high-paid specialists won't touch. He lives in a small apartment where the heater rattles, and his bank account is a constant battle of subtractions. But Ethan carries a secret that isn't written on his resume. He used to be the gold standard of aerospace engineering. Years ago, Ethan was the lead designer for high-performance turbine systems at a global conglomerate. He didn't just build engines. He spoke their language. He could hear a hairline crack in a compressor blade from 50 feet away. But his career ended in a single brutal afternoon when he refused to sign off on a flawed safety report for a major corporate project involving a government contract. He chose integrity over his paycheck, exposing a defect that would have saved the company millions but cost lives. The industry responded by blacklisting him, erasing his name from the elite circles, and forcing him into the shadows. He went from being the man who designed the future to the man who sweeps its floors. Now he carries his tools in a rusty cart, teaching Max that a man's worth isn't found in his title, but in the truth of his hands. Max is 9, and he follows his father everywhere. Since his mother passed away 3 years ago, Max has become Ethan's shadow. He sits in the corner of drafty hangars with his sketchbook, drawing complex blueprints of starships while his dad scrubs oil off the hangar floor. Ethan often tells him, "Max, don't argue with people who only look at screens. They see pixels. We see metal. Let your work speak for you. Silence is the loudest answer when you're right. A machine doesn't care about your PhD. It only cares if you know its heart." Today is different. The air in the hangar is charged with a static charge of panic. The hangar belongs to Sophia Lang, a woman who built a global empire by buying solutions and firing anyone who offered excuses. She is 44, sharp-featured, and dressed in a charcoal suit that costs more than Ethan's apartment building. She is here for a billion-dollar merger, a deal that hinges on her being in Singapore by sunrise. But her private jet, the centerpiece of her power, is grounded. The XJ9 engine, a masterpiece of modern tech, has suffered what the computers call a total systemic shutdown. It's a catastrophic heart failure. For 6 hours, 20 of the highest-paid engineers in the country have swarmed over it like ants on a carcass. They have used every diagnostic tool, every laser sensor, and every AI simulation. Their conclusion is unanimous. The engine is a total loss. They claim the central turbine shaft has fused due to an unknown thermal anomaly. Sophia stands amidst the chaos, her cold gaze fixed on the digital clock mounted on the wall. Every minute this plane sits on the ground, she loses hundreds of thousands in market leverage. To Sophia, this isn't just about a machine, it's about a lost deal and a crack in the foundation of her reputation. She watches the experts bicker, their faces pale under the harsh LED lights, realizing that for the first time in her life, her money cannot buy a shortcut. The hangar smells of ozone and failure. Sophia looks around the room, her eyes darting like a predator's, desperate for a miracle. That's when her eyes land on the man in the dirty overalls. He's standing near the edge of the perimeter, leaning against a dented tool cart. He isn't looking at the screens or the charts. He's looking at the engine intake with a strange, focused intensity, his head tilted as if he's listening to a faint whisper. He looks like a composer listening to a symphony that everyone else says is silent. He's the only person in the room who isn't sweating, and he's the only one who just dared to challenge the word impossible. He knows that machines don't lie, Only the people who interpret their data do. Sophia Lang walks toward Ethan, her heels clicking like a ticking bomb on the polished concrete floor. The sound causes the bickering engineers to fall silent. She stops 3 feet from him, looking him up and down, from his worn-out, oil-stained boots to the smudge of black grease on his jawline. She smiles, but it's a thin, dangerous curve of the lips. "You?" she asks, her voice dripping with the kind of mockery only a billionaire can afford. The man who sweeps the floors and empties the bins thinks he knows more than the men who designed the entire system architecture. My board of directors spent $50 million on this team's education, Mr. Walker. Are you suggesting that education was a waste of money? The lead engineer, a man named Henderson, a man Ethan remembers from his past life as a mediocre student who climbed the ladder through politics, laughs loudly. "We've tried everything, Sophia. We've run the full diagnostic suite 4 times. The internal compression is gone, the sensors are all red, and the AI says the core is a melted brick. This man probably thinks he can fix a $40 million turbine with a hammer and a prayer. He's just a janitor with a toolbox, looking for a tip so he can buy his kid a new toy." Ethan doesn't flinch. He doesn't look at Henderson, whose face is flushed with embarrassment and rage. He keeps his eyes on Sophia. There is a stillness in Ethan that unnerves her, a quiet confidence that she hasn't seen in her boardrooms in years. "I don't need a hammer," Ethan says, his voice steady and low, designed to carry across the hangar. "And I don't need a prayer. I just need 10 minutes to look at the logs and touch the casing. If I'm wrong, you lose 10 minutes. If I'm right, you save $30 million and you make your meeting in Singapore. Those are better odds than any you'll find on Wall Street today. Your experts are staring at a map. I'm looking at the road." Henderson steps forward, blocking Ethan's path. His shadow looms over Max. "You don't have the security clearance, Walker. You aren't even on the payroll for this project. You're a liability. Your presence here is a safety violation. Get back to your cart before I have security escort you and your kid out of here and ban you from the airport property." The digital clock on the wall flashes red. Losses? $1,200,000 and counting. Max looks at his father from his corner. He sees the way the men are looking at his dad, like he's a piece of trash, an obstacle to be moved. Max grips his sketchbook tightly, his knuckles white. Ethan feels the sting of it, the familiar weight of being underestimated, but he remembers his own rule. He leans down and whispers to Max, "Watch carefully, son. This is where the noise of ego meets the truth of the machine. Never let them see you blink. Truth is like a diamond. It doesn't break just because someone shouts at it." A young junior engineer named Kevin, who has been watching Ethan with a mix of curiosity and desperation, nudges a tablet toward him. Kevin is the only one who looks like he's actually been working instead of just arguing. "Here," the kid whispers, looking over his shoulder at Henderson. "These are the raw data logs. The last 3 minutes of flight data before the catastrophic shutdown. The AI filtered out the low-frequency signals as background noise, but it feels wrong." Ethan's eyes scan the lines of code with a speed that would shock a computer. He ignores the flashing red error messages that the others are obsessed with, the symptoms. He looks for the cause. He looks at the raw harmonic data, the tiny rhythmic pulses that the software has discarded. He points to a microscopic, irregular dip in the vibration frequency that occurs every 1.2 seconds. "That vibration doesn't belong there," Ethan says, his voice sharpening. "It's a ghost in the machine, an echo of a problem that isn't where you're looking." "It's just background resonance," Henderson shouts, grabbing the tablet back. "It's a standard harmonic flutter from the cooling fans. Ignore him, Sophia. We're wasting precious time. I've already called the supplier for a replacement core. It'll be here in 24 hours and we can start the swap. In 24 hours, your deal is dead, and this engine will still be broken because the core isn't the problem," Ethan counters. Sophia watches Ethan. She is a woman who trusts her instincts, and her instincts are telling her that Henderson is terrified and Ethan is something else. She sees the way Ethan's fingers move over the data, not with confusion, but with a deep intuitive recognition. She sees the boy in the corner looking at his father with absolute, unwavering faith. She makes a choice that defies every corporate protocol. She makes a choice that will either save her empire or end it. Everyone, shut up, Sophia commands. The hangar goes silent instantly. Even the ventilation fans seem to hum more quietly. Mr. Henderson, step back. Mr. Walker, you have 10 minutes. If you fail, or if you cause 1 cent of additional damage, I will personally see to it that you never step foot on an airfield again. I will sue you into the next century for professional negligence. Start the clock. Henderson looks like he's about to faint. Ethan just nods, grabs a single wrench from his cart, and walks toward the machine like a king reclaiming a throne. The atmosphere in the hangar shifts from mockery to a suffocating electric tension. The engineers stand back, their faces a mix of scorn and nervous anticipation. Ethan walks toward the massive, stripped-down XJ9 engine. He doesn't reach for a diagnostic computer. He doesn't look at the screens. He takes off his heavy work gloves, revealing hands that are calloused but steady. He places bare palms against the cold, titanium casing of the engine. He closes his eyes, his breathing slowing down. To the onlookers, he looks like a madman praying to a metal god. But Ethan is sensing the residual heat, the way the metal has expanded and contracted. He is feeling for the pulse of the machine. Twist 1, the overlooked flaw. Kevin, the junior engineer, prompted by Ethan's earlier comment about the ghost vibration, begins to manually refilter the harmonic data on the main 80-inch screen. He bypasses the AI's noise filter. His face turns from pale to ghost white. Wait, he stammers, his voice cracking. He's right. Look at the 14 hertz band. There's a harmonic feedback loop. It's not coming from the core. It's not a fused shaft. It's coming from the secondary cooling bypass valve. It's a phantom signal. The senior engineers freeze. Henderson's mouth hangs open. They had been so focused on the $40 million core, the most expensive part, that they completely ignored the cheap $3,000 peripheral. They were looking for a mountain when they were tripped by a pebble. Sophia moves closer, her eyes locked on Ethan, who hasn't moved. Ethan opens his eyes. He speaks clearly, his voice echoing in the vast silent space. The fault isn't in the engine's heart. It's in the thermal balancer. It's a micro-expansion. Because of the high humidity in the hangar today and a faulty seal, the balancer expanded by exactly 0.04 millimeters. It's sending a false, catastrophic heat signal to the CPU. The CPU is doing its job. It shut down the engine to prevent a meltdown that isn't actually happening. You're trying to perform heart surgery on a man who just has a fever. Your sensors are lying because they can't handle the truth of the environment. Twist 2, the power shift. Sophia realizes the magnitude of the mistake her experts made. She realizes that Henderson was ready to spend $30 million of her money to fix a problem that didn't exist. She turns to Henderson, her look so sharp it could draw blood. Then she nods to Ethan. Fix it, now, and don't stop until I hear that engine roar. Ethan climbs onto the maintenance stand. He doesn't need a team. He reaches into his old dented tool cart and pulls out a manual calibration key, a tool that many of the younger engineers haven't even seen in person, a relic from an era when engineers actually understood the mechanics of their machines. Max stands up in the corner, his sketchbook forgotten on the floor, watching his father move with the surgical precision of a master. Ethan makes a series of micro-adjustments to the bypass valve. He isn't replacing parts. He is realigning the soul of the machine. He talks to it under his breath, a low murmur that only Max recognizes. He bypasses the faulty digital sensor and resets the manual pressure valve to account for the humidity. Every turn of the wrench is a strike against the arrogance of the men standing below. Clear the intake, Ethan says, stepping down from the stand. He wipes his hands on a rag, looking perfectly calm. Henderson sneers, his hand trembling as he reaches for the master starter button on the control console. His career is on the line. If this blows, Walker, the debris alone will be enough to put you in prison. This is a violation of every FAA protocol. You're gambling with lives. Press the button, Henderson, Sophia says, her voice like iron. The button is pressed. For 3 agonizing seconds, there is only the high-pitched electric whine of the starter motor. It sounds like a dying bird. Henderson starts to smile. I told you, it's a dead core. You've just wasted our last 10 minutes. Then, a low, guttural growl erupts from the intake, a sudden puff of blue-white smoke, and then a roar that shakes the very foundation of the hangar. The engine isn't just running, it's singing. The sound is clean, powerful, and perfect. The vibration on the hangar floor is a steady rhythmic thrum that feels like a heartbeat. The hangar lights flicker for a moment as the generator takes the load. On the main monitor, the red warning and critical failure lights vanish one by one. They are replaced by a steady, calm green. The internal temperature stabilizes instantly. The impossible problem was solved with a manual key, a bit of intuition, and a pair of ears that knew how to listen to the truth. The entire hangar is dead silent, save for the magnificent roar of the turbine. The experts stare at their screens, their mouths open, unable to find a single excuse. Sophia Lang stands in the center of the roar, the wind from the intake bypass blowing her hair back. Her eyes wide as she stares at the single dad who just saved her empire. She looks at the experts she pays millions to, and then back at the man in the grease-stained overalls who just outperformed them all with a $10 wrench and 20 years of ignored experience. The roar of the engine eventually fades as the automated test cycle completes, settling into a satisfied, low-frequency hum. Sophia Lang doesn't move for a long time. She stands frozen, looking at Ethan. The silence that follows the engine's roar is even more powerful than the noise itself. It is a silence of shame for some and triumph for one. The efficiency rating is at 99.8%, Kevin whispers from the terminal, his voice full of awe. That's higher than the factory's own test benchmarks. He didn't just fix it, he tuned it to the local atmosphere. It's perfect. Sophia walks slowly toward Ethan. The mockery that had defined her expression 20 minutes ago has been replaced by a profound, uncomfortable realization. She looks at the tool cart, then at Ethan's hands, which are once again covered in a fresh layer of oil. She sees the scars on his knuckles, marks of a lifetime of hard work that she had mistaken for incompetence. He just saved us $30 million in parts. Henderson tries to intervene, his voice shaky and desperate for relevance. And probably another $100 million in contract penalties. I'll have the paperwork drawn up to give him a bonus, Sophia. A generous one. Maybe $5,000. It's more than he makes in a month. Sophia doesn't even look at Henderson. She raises a hand and Henderson falls silent, shrinking back into the shadows of his own failure. She stops inches from Ethan. Why? She asks, her voice low and remarkably human. Why are you doing this job? Why are you pushing a cart and taking orders from men who don't know half of what you do? A man with your talent should be running a laboratory, not sweeping its floors. You could have let us fail. Why didn't you? Ethan wipes his hands on a rag, his expression unchanged. He doesn't look like a man who just won a victory. He looks like a man who just finished a day's work. He looks over his shoulder at his son, Max, who is now standing proudly by the tool cart, clutching his sketchbook like a trophy. Because I won't lie to machines, Miss Lang, Ethan says, his voice carrying the weight of years of struggle and silent dignity. And I won't work for people who value a spreadsheet over the truth. 20 years ago, I told the truth about a flaw in an engine design. The company wanted to hide it to save their stock price. They fired me, blacklisted me, and told the world I was incompetent. I lost my career because I spoke up for the people who would be flying on those planes. I've lived in the dirt ever since, but my conscience is clean. I'd rather be a nobody who is right and can look his son in the eye than a somebody who is a fraud. Max steps forward, taking his father's hand. He looks up at Sophia with a gaze that is both innocent and incredibly old, as if he understands exactly what his father has sacrificed. The engineers, who minutes ago were laughing and mocking the janitor, now look at the floor. No one claps. No one cheers. The silence is heavy because Ethan's presence has stripped away their vanity. He didn't just fix an engine. He exposed a culture of arrogance that had become the standard. Sophia looks at the tattered notebook protruding from Ethan's pocket, the one filled with hand-drawn diagrams and complex equations. She realizes she didn't just find a mechanic. She found the original architect of the very technology her company is built on. She recognizes the signature on the diagrams in the notebook. It's a signature from the Walker-Henderson proposal she rejected 20 years ago when she was just starting out. A proposal she had been told was too expensive by the very men standing behind her now. They hadn't just stolen his career, they had stolen his future and sold it back to her as their own. "You're that Walker," she whispers, the weight of the injustice hitting her like a physical blow. "The one who warned us about the turbine oscillations?" Ethan doesn't confirm or deny. He just picks up a fallen wrench and puts it back in its slot. "The engine is ready, Ms. Lang. You have a meeting in Singapore. You shouldn't be late. Time is the only thing you can't fix with a wrench." Sophia Lang turns to face her entire team. Her voice is no longer cold. It is clear, authoritative, and filled with a new kind of purpose. She doesn't look at her watch. She looks at the people who nearly cost her everything. "I want to apologize," she says, her gaze sweeping across the room, lingering on Henderson and the senior leads. "Not just for the mockery we witnessed today, but for the blindness of this entire organization. We stopped looking for talent and started looking for credentials. We stopped listening to the metal and started listening to the marketing. We nearly destroyed a billion-dollar deal because we were too arrogant to listen to the man who actually knew the truth. Mr. Henderson, you're fired. Take your experts and leave my hangar." The room remains silent as Henderson and his team slink away. Sophia turns back to Ethan. She reaches into her suit pocket and pulls out a pen, a sleek gold instrument. She doesn't offer him a bonus. She offers him a future. "I need you, Ethan. I don't need a maintenance man. I need a chief of engineering who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. I'm offering you a global leadership role, a salary that reflects your true worth, and the resources to rebuild the safety protocols of this entire industry. I want you to make sure no one ever has to choose between their job and the truth again. Name your price." Ethan looks at the pen, then at the eyes of the billionaire woman. He sees a genuine respect there, a crack in the ice. He sees a woman who has finally learned the value of what cannot be bought. Then he looks at Max. He doesn't jump at the money. He doesn't look impressed by the zeros on the imaginary check. "I'll take the job," Ethan says, his voice calm, "but on two conditions that are non-negotiable. First, I have complete technical and safety independence. My word is final. If I say a plane doesn't fly, it doesn't fly, no matter who is on the board or how much money is at stake. You listen to the engineers, not the accountants. Second, I am never under any circumstances late to pick up my son from school. My work will be done by 3 p.m. every day, or it won't be done at all. My son is the only engine I can't replace." Sophia doesn't even blink. She doesn't consult a lawyer. She doesn't look at a spreadsheet. She nods. "Agreed. Those terms will be written into the first paragraph of your contract in bold letters. Welcome back to the sky, Mr. Walker. And Max, I think we might need a new lead designer for our Starship division soon. Keep drawing." Max looks at his dad with a face full of pure, unadulterated pride. The impossible fix was never about the XJ9 engine. It was about a man who refused to break his own code, even when the world tried to crush him. The engine is sealed, the cowling is replaced, and the hangar doors grind open, revealing a bright, clear sky. Sophia Lang watches from the observation deck as Ethan and Max walk out of the hangar, hand in hand, pushing that old, rusty tool cart for the last time. She realizes that money can buy the fastest planes and the most expensive sensors in the world, but it can never buy the integrity of a man who knows his own worth. Ethan Walker isn't a poor single dad anymore. He is the man who spoke the truth in a room full of lies, and for once the world was forced to listen to the roar of honesty. He walked in a janitor and walked out a legend. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe. Truth always outperforms arrogance.